We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
I enticed her into the woods with words worth dying for. I dropped her on the daisies with praises worthy of the moment, attempting to speak truly, if not truthfully, about lost things in lost places with lost words in a lost song, and somehow bring them to be found. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed, and I thank you for joining me on this Saturday's broadcast. I'm looking forward to continuing this introspection into all things esoteric, and especially fond of the topic that we will be covering this evening. This will be a second in an ongoing series of how the flat Earth is key to decrypting the Book of Enoch, which is my 9th and latest publication. It was just released on Rosh Hashanah in September 2015, and we're almost to a new year. I hope everybody is doing well and that life finds you blessed and of good health and well-being. My liaison in the chat room is Kathy Dunson, for those of you that have listened to and followed the work of John the Baptist over at Tribulation Now. She has been working in Tangent for a long time and helping him with the production of that show, and is a great asset on all things, as far as the introspection of all things conspiratorial as well as biblical, prophetic side of understanding how these things connect together in full summation. And so Kathy will relate your questions, should you have any, as we continue and go through these different segments of the show. She'll relate them to me. And so if you have anything that you would like to ask, a question or a comment, she'll relay it to me and we'll share it live on the air. And I think that the whole Q&A is very important as far as the fellowship of the listening audience with the various hosts, not just this program, but all the others, and that you bring so much to the table as far as your wisdom and the things that you are in person, as far as your, each one of you individually, wherever you may be, whichever part of the world, that you are doing your own research, and a lot of you are studying and looking into things which we as the hosts may not have time and availability to do. And so to share your commentary and your wisdom and your insight is absolutely critical, in my opinion, and in the format of this show as far as bringing forth truth, because I know myself, I'm very busy with all of my own endeavors, and even now, even though the flat Earth as topic and area of research is very important to me, I am even now working on other books and other writing projects and endeavors in that way, and I'll talk about those at a later date, and that's why I also think that Kathy coming on with me, because we're going to be doing a segment at the very early part of the different shows where she's going to come on and talk about current flat Earth topics as far as articles or shows that have been done by other hosts, not just here at Truth Frequency Radio, but in other other radio networks, talking about this and other topics that are relevant to the discourse, to the discussion, and that may be important for you to know and be able to get a grasp upon. And so, and I, again, because she's able to spend her time doing a lot of research that I'm myself not able to do, I think she will bring a very important voice to this show and to the discourse on not only this but other topics. And so, that being said, I'd like to introduce to you Kathy Dunson. Are you there, sister?
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody.
Well, thank you, Kathy, for not only making yourself available to this show, Secrets Revealed, but for all that you have done previously on behalf of the kingdom. And I think you do really incredible research, and for that you should be applauded. And so, and that actually brings me to the first portion that I'd like to open up with, and then as we go into the conversation, we'll talk about some of the other, as far as the questions that you have specifically relayed to me, which are connected to not only the Flat Earthers topic, but also in the publication of my 9th book. But there was just recently an article that was released which mentioned the work of Mark Sargent, who also does a show here called Strange World, which I thought was really good article and something that we can open with as far as discussion. But before we do that, I want to give you a chance, Kathy, to mention or also talk about anything else you thought was important, which may have occurred over this week, which is relevant to this particular topic of conversation. And of course, I know you've got an ongoing list, and that certainly we won't be able to cover all of those, but we'll get to what we can as we move along, not only on this show but on others. And that if you, the listening audience, have other questions which you'd like to ask us, that I'm going to also spend a segment of each one of the broadcasts answering your questions and trying to provide the answer that you are seeking. And so we will add those, if you send them at a later date, to my email at zengarcia.com or zengarcia2010 at gmail.com, which is my personal email, or you can contact me at Facebook, Zen Garcia. Kathy, why don't you give out your contact information as well? I'll pull up this article, and then if you would talk about 3 or 4 items which you thought were really interesting, which we can talk about this evening.
Okay. My email address is paralandra77 at gmail.com. That's PERELANDRA 77 at gmail. If you recognize that name, it's from the second book in the Space Trilogy by C.S. Lewis. I have been a long time science fiction fan, space fan. So, of course, this is all something, the totality of flat Earth and what is involved with the vastness of space and the fantasy that we've kind of found ourselves so caught up in. So that was part of it for me, Paralandra. Something that occurred just the other day that I found very telling. There was a new photo from NASA out called Earthrise. This was a follow-up to one of the earliest photos from the moon, supposedly from the moon, with the Earth in the background, called Earthrise, and that was in 1968 on Christmas Eve. So perhaps that was why they came out at this point in time with a supposed new one. Now the scale is incredible to look at. The first one has a very small picture of, well, it's not a picture of the Earth in the background with a large moon foreground. But then when you see what they have done now, they have enlarged the size of the Earth. This may be because of so much that has gone on in the flat Earth community, talking about the disparity with images that have just started coming out. There had been no images from NASA of the Earth from space other than 1972, which we come to find is a composite. And so now we are seeing so much daily, even from NASA, not necessarily a photo, but things that seem to be almost a response to the talk in flat Earth community. But I tell you, I'll go ahead and I'll put a link to both of those images in the chat room so you can see how really crazy they look.
I'm really glad that you brought this point up for discussion, because for those that don't know and haven't seen the interview that Rob Skiba does with Josh Peck, but in this they discuss one of these NASA, I think it's Apollo 11, a view of the Earth rising from the moon and over the left shoulder of one of the astronauts during one of those pictures that was supposedly taken from the moon. But he opened the photo live on during this discussion. I guess there's some tool which allows you to share what your screen projection, whatever you're looking at on your screen through Skype, and that he was sharing this with Josh Peck live, and he went and opened this photo, downloaded it, opened it from NASA directly, and opened it, and then changed the levels in Photoshop, and it showed that there was a box around this supposed, Earth, this image of the Earth, and it showed that it had been pasted into this image, which we know that because of the Van Allen belts, that there's no way that they could have made it to the moon, and did so way back then. They even now, with the current Orion project, they talk about how there's this impossible barrier to pass called the Van Allen radiation belts, and there's these 3 layers of these belts, and that supposedly, back in the early 70s and the late 60s, that they had somehow made it past these particular radiation belts when they can't do it now. And it's just funny to me how people aren't talking about that when NASA themselves, and I'll send you a link to it, but they even posted on their own website talking about how these Van Allen radiation belts are an impassable barrier. And for everybody that gives them the benefit of the doubt and believes that we actually went to the moon, and that not just once, but over all these different Apollo missions, that we have gone to the moon, and that all of these images were taken from there. That in itself shows you that NASA, just with what Rob showed about how the Earth in this particular Apollo 11 was added to this image, and that it shows a rectangular box, much like what they do to debunk the supposed UFOs that are, added to images and photoshopped in similar manner. And so it just verifies that they are not to be trusted. And, when you look at these 2 images that you're speaking about side by side, the one from way earlier and the one that was just recently released, well, the scale is off. So that, one of them that has to be completely a deception, even if you were to believe what NASA puts out is relevant and truthful, one of them in this case has to be absolutely contrived and a hoax, which we know that both of them are, because the Earth is not flat and neither does it move, and this has all been verified and proven scientifically, and which is another thing, for anybody that still believes in the whole as far as a globular Earth. And so these kind of things should be a red flag for people, anybody, especially if they're just now looking into these particular topics, should be a red flag as to why NASA can't be trusted. And if they are hoaxing, why it is that they find it necessary to do so. And if they are lying about anything, why would anybody believe anything that they say? Kathy?
Then there were that picture, the new one. It was actually released on the 21st, just the other day, and the Earth just does not look believable.
Right.
When you hold that up against what they have said, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is officially the science spokesman for the United States, he says that the Earth is a oblate spheroid. But then recently, I discovered a video from 1958 where NASA says the Earth is slightly pear-shaped. So
Right.
you've got those conflicts, and then we always see a perfectly circular picture of the globe. It's not right.
Right. Which brings me to another hoax that we know that NASA has perpetuated, and that was when the supposed Apollo mission had gone to the moon. And this was not supposed to be released to the public, but it shows how they projected to the public and to the to those that were watching this supposed NASA live stream, how they hoaxed the shape of the Earth as a globe by utilizing the inner window of the lunar module. And for those that have not seen it, you can just type up Apollo 11 hoax, and it'll show how they did this. And what they did is they took the camera to the very back end of the lunar module, and then they used the circular window to give the illusion that the Earth was this globe and that they were far out into space and, close to the moon, when they were actually in low Earth orbit, and the Earth was huge outside of that window of their lunar module. And it shows and also brings forth the recording of Houston with the discourse and the chat with the Apollo astronauts, and how they were kind of coached into perpetuating this lie, which is another reason why we can't believe, and one of the main reasons why I doubt anything that they say. And so anybody that gives them any benefit of the doubt is got to be, why would you believe any liar? If somebody lied to you to your face about anything, you would second guess anything they told you. But if they were found to be lied to you almost every time they talk to you, well, then you most certainly wouldn't believe anything that they say, and you probably would not even want to ever have conversation with such individuals. And so how it is that the public gives NASA any kind of authority as far as their professional opinions is absolutely beyond me, which I'm going to give you a chance to comment on that. But also, I want to bring up, since we're talking about this most recent release of the so-called Stanley Kubrick testimony, where they have this guy named Tom being coached by this film, this whoever it is that is shooting this film, and he's acting like he's Stanley Kubrick and talking about how he shot the moon landings. And so let me give you a chance to comment on the Apollo 11, their use of the window, and then if you would comment on this Stanley Kubrick interview, and then I'll follow up with your comment.
Okay. The first that I saw the Apollo 11 hoax, the way that they manipulated that, was watching Bart Sibrel's video movie, Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon.
Yes.
And he's the one that actually got that footage. He put in a FOIA request, and either a whistleblower, someone who wanted to get that out, or they did it by mistake. Who knows exactly why, but the footage was given to him. And so they've included it in that film. I just watched this in the last year. So prior to that, I don't know what I really thought about NASA. I mean, so much of the information that came out that would be Planet X related or meteorites, the sun. I would start the day on Facebook posting suspicious observers and what was going on with the sun, truly believing this is somehow an image of the sun. But it isn't. So, one thing after another is falling down about NASA and what they give out. But I didn't really question that until the Bart Sibrel piece. And the most damning piece of evidence in that is the Apollo 11 portion. And you watch that, and I mean, I've already had a lot of illusions shattered, but that was a huge one. I mean, I was 13 years old watching that happen live. I mean, you weren't born. But I mean, I remember that. That's my childhood, seeing a man walk on the moon and believing that. After the Kubrick, real quick, I'll jump there now. I saw that come out. And I mean, I was really excited. This was going to confirm. And actually, it was very interesting for me at the time. I had really gotten into watching Kubrick's films because I had also watched the Odyssey. I think it's Jay Widener's documentary. And I highly recommend that to anyone who wants to learn more about this. Kubrick's Odyssey. I had watched that, and so then I was interested in seeing his other films, just seeing how his mind worked and what was going on with that. You look at 2001: Space Odyssey, that came out at the time that the moon launches were going on, that the moonwalk, the mission to the moon, and it's so believable or understandable how he would have done this. So I saw this come out. I was excited. This was going to clinch it, and watching it, it jumped around a lot. I could see that. I thought of it more in an artistic way, but I would look at comments from people, and they were concentrating on that part of it, that aspect of it. And then I came on what were the outtakes from it, and I was sending them to you, to Kenneth. I even sent them to Mark Sargent, and he, either through me or another way, found that, and he uploaded that. And finally, the excitement in the community died down as we realized, no, this was just a hoax of the hoax. But that could be, in a way, intentional to always associate, what people are considering the moon hoax against NASA. That now, they'll use that to somehow debunk it. I mean, that might be one reason.
Yeah, in fact, that was when you first sent it to me and I received it. What I did immediately was to go and look at all of the other material that this individual uploaded. And I saw in some of the previous broadcasts that he had uploaded that he was training this guy, he was coaching this individual to act like Stanley Kubrick. And then, after I thought about all of that, I was wondering why. Because if they were truly trying to um, lead the flat Earth community into believing that this was Stanley Kubrick, they wouldn't have made that mistake. And a lot of the different fabrications, they're shot by people that are hired by the CIA, and they don't make mistakes like that unless it was intentional. And so my whole thinking in considering this and thinking about it is that they were trying to hoax the hoax, and that they were trying to put forth the whole premise that Stanley Kubrick did not shoot the original Stanley Kubrick did not shoot the moon landings, and that this being a hoax of the hoax verified that, and that it was in order to lead people astray as to understanding that in fact the lunar landings could not have been could not have really occurred in the way that we've been led to believe, and that absolutely it's to throw us off the trail as to, for those that have looked into Stanley Kubrick and like the his in the movie in The Shining, and how he shows kind of under whispered tones. Well, we'll be right back, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. All right, welcome back, everybody. I was talking about before we went to break about how Stanley Kubrick had encoded into that movie The Shining his involvement in the Apollo missions and the staging and the filming of the supposed lunar landings. And so, in my opinion, that what they were trying to do with this most recent psyop and this most recent release of this fake Kubrick hoaxed video was that they were trying to throw us off from there being any actual belief in that story having any kind of veracity to it, and that they were trying to throw off the trail for those that might look at it. They'll see that particular release of this most recent Kubrick interview, and they'll say, "Oh, it was all a hoax. This is to verify that." And for even those of the flat Earth community that look into it even deeper, and we know that that was not in any way Stanley Kubrick, but some guy named Tom, and that he was being coached. That there's no way they would have released their actual coaching of him to act like Stanley Kubrick unless there was some purpose, some reason for them doing so. And in my opinion, that is the real reason, is to muddle the whole, as far as Stanley Kubrick's connection to the real lunar, as far as the photo shoot and the whole video series, and that the reason they went to him anyways was because his involvement with 2001, which again was ahead of its time for those that have not seen that. But let me give you a chance for final comment on this, and then we'll go into this particular article that I wanted to bring forth, because in the next hour I do want to cover some of the questions and answer some of those from the show that I did previously last week.
The thing I'd say is the flip side of that would be to perhaps bolster NASA in the minds of people who see that. Right. And because the flat Earth community comes out, one of the strongest points where people start questioning things is to see all the obvious lies and deception coming from NASA. It's hard to see anything truthful. Starting with the Van Allen belt, we can't get out there, and they have done it. They have put out that information from their own sources. I mean, there's a video out there talking about the Orion project, and someday we'll get past there, but we can't yet because they would die. So that, and I did want to just mention again these resources because in my mind they really lay out well how it could have been a hoax for the moon landing done by Kubrick. But one of those is Room 237, which is a documentary into the deeper meanings of Kubrick's films, and then specifically about the moon landing called Kubrick's Odyssey, and that's Jay Widener.
Yeah, excellent points, and I'm really glad that you have those two links as well. And I did, Kathy, I sent you on Skype as far as this particular the link to this article, Van Allen probes spot an impenetrable barrier in space, so that you can share that with the listening audience. But anyways, very interesting. And this was November 27, 2014 that they released this. And again, it talks about how there's this radiation barrier out there which keeps them from being able to send any kind of living being through these particular barriers, and that it absolutely affects them in a way that would be totally adverse to their health. And how the Orion project, as Kathy had mentioned, they are having to take this into consideration and are having to plan and prepare for this. And back in the late 60s and early 70s, that they were able to send all these lunar missions and land on the moon and collect these moon rocks and all the it's all just lie upon lie upon lie, creating just a huge web of deceit. And so for those that have not heard about or looked into anything that we're talking about here, this is absolute reason for you to investigate this for yourself and to question why it is that you believe in a globe. Another thing that most recently I was asked, and I'm not going to pull up the exact because I don't want to spend time looking for the exact question, but I was asked why NASA doesn't just, if they have this Hubble telescope up there, why don't they just turn it towards the Earth and take a bunch of photos and verify to us that the spherical shape of the Earth, that's all it would take, almost case closed if they could show this to us. And if they have all of these 20,000 satellites up there that are all in orbit around the Earth 24 hours a day, why don't they? Because we know that many of these satellites, supposed satellites, even though they're flying in the thermosphere, and that the thermosphere is supposedly has a temperature which would melt any of the particular as far as the things that they are supposedly composed out of, it would totally melt these particular satellites. But anyways, their claim is that they have all these even spy satellites which allow them to look and to see even a wallet on the sidewalk here upon the surface of the Earth from space, and that they can key and look that sharply and that closely from supposedly way up there. Why can't they just take some images and take some videos of the Earth and show to us the sphericity, the globularness of the Earth, and verify and put to bed this whole discussion? And they haven't, and they won't, and the only photos that we have are composites, and even those composites, like even the supposed blue marbles and these different images of the Earth which have been taken over the last 30 years, even in those images there are contradictions. The Earth is North America is of different size. You have embedded into the clouds the word sex, and it's obvious that they are using the cloning tool in Photoshop to replicate these clouds and these cloud layers and cloud banks, and that they are lazy in even their hoaxing of this, as far as this particular trying to perpetuate this lie upon the masses, that they are even lazy in their perpetuation of it. Kathy?
Um, what you were saying about the Hubble, we spent a lot of time watching the blood moon, the different eclipses, the lunar eclipse, solar eclipse. Why don't they turn any of the satellites or the Hubble or from ISS to give us a better view of those events?
Right.
That seems like something people would be interested in. I also wanted to mention crafting the blue marble. There's an article that talks about how they make it a composite image. It's not just as you've
Right.
explained, but there's an article. Just do a Google search, crafting the blue marble. I mean, we're led to believe, they let you believe these things, that these are real photos, and most people think they're actual photos, and they are not.
Yeah, which is again another red flag. Why would they have to create these composites if they have the capacity to shoot these images in high definition? And to provide these videos? How are they? Even the photos and these video compilations. There's never any stars in the background. There's never any
That's right.
clouds moving. It just, they're not even good renditions. I mean,
Well,
it's
then if you look at the photos or the video decades ago of the Earth rotating, from space, and then you look now at the ISS, and it's like HD. I mean, the quality is completely different. It looks like two completely different Earths, and that's not believable.
right, right. Also, this brings me to another, as far as NASA hoaxing things and all the lies that they perpetuated. In the interview that I did with Rob Skiba on when he interviewed me here on Truth Frequency Radio before I started my own show here, he did the first interview on my ninth book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, and in creating a video overlay for that broadcast and for that interview, I show at the very end, because in that interview we talked about how in some of these live feeds where they're shooting from supposedly the International Space Station, and they're looking down on the Earth, how during several of these live feeds we see that they are actually projecting the image of the International Space Station upon a green screen of the Earth, floating by in all of its majesty, and then all of a sudden the Earth disappears. And I show in this video and in this interview several instances where this occurs. And so, again, they are projecting a hoax and trying to lead us to believe a certain way. And I'll actually, when you're talking and commenting, and when we cover this next article, I'll find the link to that interview, and I'll send it to you so you can share. But at the very end of this interview, Rob and I are talking about how not only as far as these supposed live spacewalks, how there's several times where air bubbles are caught in the supposed live stream, and it shows that they are actually shooting these spacewalks underwater, and because there's no other way for there to be bubbles. I mean, there's no air bubbles in the vacuum of space, and they most certainly wouldn't float up in the manner that they do if as occurs in the in fluid and water and that kind of medium. And so these are other things which are perpetuated, fabricated, and shows that they are absolutely lying to us. as far as the spacewalks and also of the International Space Station being up there in orbit around the Earth. One other thing, as far as the International Space Station, when you look at the way that they have created it, the infrastructure and also the blueprints of it, uh, each one of the sections, they're not closed off. It's all connected in one big elongated H type of structure. Whereas even in a submarine, you have each part of the submarine, you have these airlocks just in case, one portion of the submarine is breached and it gets flooded. Then people can run to the other portions of the ship, the submarine, and close off the other portion so that they don't die from, having everything flooded. And the International Space Station should be created and built in the same manner, but it's not, which is another red flag, because you would think that if they're up there in space and there's all of this debris, because they always talk about how there's so much debris up there and how even one little pebble could totally puncture and destroy something because of the speed and the velocity at which it might be, moving, that they would want to build into the structure these safeguards. But because they don't, and because there are no such safeguards and no such airlocks, is verification, in my opinion, that, again, the International Space Station is a complete hoax in it of itself as well. Kathy?
Mark Sargent had a structural engineer on, he interviewed, that said there's no way that the ISS could possibly exist from the framework that the design that you just described to there's no replacement parts coming up. They've been there 15 years. Is that, I don't know exactly the length, but it's been a very long time. It's just an impossibility. The guy that just went up from the UK, his last name's Peak. I don't recall his first name. He gets on. He doesn't have any shoes on. He's got like the regulation polo shirt, and it's just it's not believable that they're just up there and their toilets are not dirty after 15 years.
Right.
I just don't understand. I don't know why so many people are buying into this. But I know myself, I never questioned it. I never questioned these things.
Right. Yeah, neither did I. What's even funny is to me, as far as the whole hoax, is, every time they do these videos where they have the school children are able to ask the astronauts, questions live. They have all the women with their hair sprayed completely straight up, as if it's, their hair, because there's no gravity, that it would just stand up in that way. And it's just so funny to me how much they try to fabricate. And there was also just a video where they release of themselves, which is like this extended spacewalk where this guy is looking for Chris, I believe his name is. I'm not sure, but he goes through all these different portions of the International Space Station. And this long enduring segment is cut and pasted. It's like, it's supposed to be this live stream, and it's been cut and pasted and pieced together, which again is just further verification that they are trying to hoax. But yeah, absolutely. As far as the different segments, it's not believable. And again, the thermosphere would most certainly it would fry the things and melt these solar panels and what they supposedly have used to create the International Space Station. And so these kind of things are proof that there's no way that what they are trying to fabricate is in any way believable. All right, let me get you to comment one more, and then we'll go into this article.
With the topic of flat Earth, there are so many things, and it's hard to grasp initially because it's such a paradigm shift. I mean,
Right,
you've learned, you've known this. I mean, you've been taught this, programmed this since a child. In many cases, with a mobile over your crib, and then into the classroom with a globe. I've been watching a Spanish subtitled TV series on Netflix, and it's set in the 30s. And there's a wooden globe on the secretary's desk. It's that
right.
intense, the programming, and that is why we experience the pushback, the cognitive dissonance so strongly. I mean, I understand that, but it's so vast. So to bring someone in, I think a lot of times seeing the apparent deception from NASA, just the images, just look at the images of the Earth that you believed
Yes,
that was true, but it's so obvious. And then to see sex written in the clouds, to see the
right,
clouds cloned, and to see what NASA has done with Pluto. First, the satellites or the spacecraft shouldn't make it. I mean, if you look at the impossibility of the distance and the asteroid belt that it had to go through, and then now it's just sailing past Pluto. It takes a shot at the speed it's going, and there happens to be the Disney character
right,
Pluto
right,
outlined on the planet. You know, it's just such a farce. And now, I mean, they are just thumbing their noses at us.
right. Yeah,
So
it's so laughable.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you could go on and on. I haven't found anything to give them credit for. If I had to go pros and cons, I don't find anything to give them credit for. I've just always accepted it, and now I don't accept anything. You know,
Right.
I've looked at the sun, and that's they have a video called thermonuclear art. It's not real either. You know, that's just a recent thing for me. And reading articles about that, it says, well, they make it sound like, well, you can't understand how to look at it, so we have the equipment. That's what they do. They make things so vast and so far, you can't possibly understand it. We'll do it for you, and we'll show you. And that's what it is throughout.
Yeah, I totally agree that they are thumbing their noses at us and they're laughing at us. You know, it's just like the whole thing with the UN flag with its depiction of the flat Earth and all the countries of the world and singular circular embrace, as I say in my poem. As far as the United Nations, it's basically like the flag of victory. They've succeeded in conquest of the and have a establish global, you know, because they're these globalists and have established this whole lie, and it's like putting up a banner of victory, you know, when in during the wars, whenever they took over a different nation, like in America and Japan fighting in the Pacific, whenever they took over one of these islands, they would raise the flag, even like the Iwo Jima, that you know, the image of the four soldiers raising the American flag in Iwo Jima, which is totally iconic. The globalists did the same thing with United Nations and raising the flag, the United Nations flag with the flat Earth depicted as emblem on it. They're basically, you know, it's the whole gang sign for they're saying to all of the members of their secret societies worldwide, we've succeeded in, you know, establishing this world government and in controlling the United Nations. But before we get to the next break, I do want to go ahead and read a little bit from this article. The name of the article is the Earth flat? Question mark. Thousands believe madcap theory world is really a dome top disc. And you notice even in the, you know, the title of the article that they're making fun of flat earthers, and they are, you know, linking us with these conspiracy theorists. But I'll just read a little bit of this article, and then we'll comment on it when we get back. And then we'll go into some of the questions and answers that from the last show that the listeners have sent to us. For thousands of years, mankind thought the earth was flat and you could sail to the edge of the world where you might fall off. Of course, they'd have to bring that forth in order to make it all laughable, because they're trying to relate us flat earthers as being crazy, and that anybody who would even consider this as the real shape and model of the earth, that you would have to be totally lunatic fringe and insane to even open yourself to such possibility. All right. Thousands of people believe the earth is flat and could have a dome. And then by and around the 14th century, most educated, again making fun of us, the flat earthers, most educated scholars agreed with the viewpoint of the ancient Greeks that it was, in fact, a sphere. But now, amazingly, thousands of people are reverting back to the age-old theory the globe is more a diorama with a hardcore, they screw up this sentence, but with a hardcore among them adding the cherry on top that it is capped off with a glass dome that prevents us from leaving. And it is not just YouTube video makers in their bedroom putting together short films touting the theory. A series of, in some cases, slick websites trying to convince the world things are much flatter have sprung up. Most agree the world is not a spherical planet in space, but instead a disk or a plane, but then the theories differ in craziness. Just even the way that they have structured and organized this whole article, they totally try to attach flat earth truth, to just insanity. One of the slickest looking websites is Enclosed World. Well, we'll be right back and we'll pick it up on the other side. All right, welcome back, everybody. We will take phone calls over this next hour. And so the call-in number for those of you that might like to ask a question or share commentary is 866-37-TRUTH or 866-378-7884. I do ask that you give me just a few minutes to read a little bit more of this article, and then we'll be glad to and I'll be able to come back to the board and check to see if you have called in, and we do appreciate the commentary and the fellowship that we share with all of you. All right, and so just a little bit more of this article. It brings together a series of YouTube videos called Flat Earth Clues, which started being posted online this year. In short, the website claims the flat Earth is protected by a giant glass dome, the surface of which is higher than any plane can fly, and makes clear that this is no joke. It is run by Mark Sargent. Again, Mark does a show here on Truth Frequency Radio. .com called Strange World, and I believe he comes on Tuesdays at what would be midnight Eastern or 3 or 9 p.m. on Pacific West Coast time. I believe, I'm not absolutely positive, but I do believe that's when he comes on. An IT specialist from Boulder, Colorado, who last year, in his own words, began looking into what is no doubt the most ridiculous conspiracy ever, called the Flat Earth Theory. But rather than disprove it, Mark Sargent became a convert and then one of its greatest supporters. His website says through extensive research, he discovered that it wasn't so laughable after all. And early in 2015, he released a series of YouTube videos titled Flat Earth Clues, which delve into the possibility of our human civilization actually being inside a Truman Show-like enclosed system, and how it's been hidden from the public since 1956. Mark's hope is that one day the 100th monkey scenario will occur. The the majority of the population would start seeing things with new eyes, and the world will literally change. I'm not going to read the rest of the article. You can certainly Google it for yourself or bring it up. For those of you that um, I have a website that I run called Fallen Angels TV. That's www.fallenangels.tv. And that article is listed in on the blog section of that website. It's a truth seeking network that I run for, individuals like yourself that are seeking fellowship with others of like mind on all of these esoteric and very strange topics. And so go there and join us for our discourse and discussion. But I'll get Kathy to comment here, and then I'll talk a little bit about my own experience as far as coming to truth on this. Can you tell us, Kathy, yourself, why it was that you began to investigate this particular topic and how you were led to research it further?
Well, for Tribulation Now, I have maintained as the administrator a Facebook page, and along with two gals that help me out, and that would be C Joy, she's in the chat room, and B. And B and I saw this coming into being talked about, and we thought, what? Flat Earth, not that too. We were just, incredulous, and we weren't going to go there. There's too much going on, and so we just didn't. And I saw that Rob had started to look into it, but I still wasn't going to go there. And then you did a show, so that was it. I had to listen to your show. I always listen to your shows, and so so then I thought, well, actually, before I listened to that show you did, I watched the Flat Earth Clues. That's what people were sharing and saying, take a look at this, and we just weren't going to do it. So I did, in order to kind of get up to speed, listen to your show. And that's the kind of thing, enough questions are raised in your mind. Like I said earlier with NASA, the obvious things going on that you hadn't thought of before. And in my recent mine had been the funny thing happened on the way to the moon about the moon landing hoax. So these are things adding together, and I felt I had to really look into it. So what I did next, and for a Christian, I think this is the best way to get an idea of what's going on. And I feel we have an obligation to, for many reasons, and we'll probably talk about those. But I went through Rob Skiba's investigation, his website. He's done such a great job in taking a look at it from a very in-depth level, and you just kind of go on a journey with him in many different areas. The obvious questions people would have about, why don't you fall off the edge? Or I look in the sky. This is a silly one, but everybody asks it. I look in the sky and all the planets are round, so aren't we round? Those kinds of questions. But he did it so well. And I would just spend, like, every Friday I'd come home from work and I'd go through the next topic on his website. So that's what I did. And, you get kind of hooked. It's not like it's something that you're looking at inordinately too much. All your life, you've been living this thing that you believed, which is part of your entire worldview. And this comes up, and it's an amazing change. It's one where all of a sudden I watch Ancient Aliens, which I used to do before just to see what they were talking about. And a lot of that you could understand, but now I look at it and it's an assault on me more than it used to be, to see all of the spheres, all of the planets, and the graphics. Everything's made up. Everything is a cartoon. And it makes it more apparent to me that the goal has been man's insignificance, and that leads into evolution. That leads into panspermia. The aliens are going to come and be our saviors. even this last Ancient Aliens show I was watching, which was a rerun about Mars and aliens on Mars, they're talking about how the Bible needs to be rewritten to say that heaven is space, because they didn't understand it back then. So that's the kind of thing that I've been going through as a journey after I did the initial steps, which came from you.
Well, that's a perfect segue for a question that always comes up, and I know that because you run the Tribulation Now, the Facebook page, that you get approached with this same particular question. So I'll just go ahead and read it. It has to do with salvation, and then people always ask me, how does the flat Earth have any link, and how does it have any relevant bearing to salvation? And why is it important for us to know what the earth is as far as the shape and form? And so in answering that, because when I posted this show, the description of this show on my Facebook page, there was quite a lot of discussion, and very, heated, but in a respectful and in a manner which people were honoring each other. And so I was grateful for that, and enjoyed seeing that, people weren't just losing their heads, because that happens as well. And I've seen that happen a lot. But here's the reply that I sent to an individual on this topic. And he said, evangelists are supposed to support truth and clarify deceptions. What is a larger and more controversial deception than this? And you're wrong. I'm not going to say the person's name. This issue has a greater bearing on salvation than any other, or what most people believe. Maybe not for you or for me, but millions, maybe even billions of people. As far as your statement, I have evidence to the contrary. This issue is leading a lot of people to God and the study of the gospel. In fact, yesterday I spoke with a woman whose husband is an astrophysicist and was an atheist, but when he began to research the flat earth and its connections to the scriptures, he changed his perspective, accepted there to have to have been a God, and began to study the Bible where he'd never had prior. She said that he completely changed, and now they have since moved out of the United States and live in a different country, having disconnected from the grid, believing that they were to come out of her, my people, as she referenced. And so no matter what people think about the issue, many people are being led to new relationship with God and the scriptures because of this issue. It is because of the Darwinian heliocentric model that so many have been led astray from the revelation of intelligent design and the gospel as the prophetic word of God the Creator, which asserts that we as humans are a special creation made in the image of God, and that the earth was especially created as dwelling place for all the creatures that he then made to live upon it. Evolution, established on the foundation of the heliocentric lie, has led more astray than any other deception, and is also basis for the ancient alien lie that the fallen angels created us, which is now being pushed and perpetuated increasingly more. What could be of greater significance than all of the people that have been led away from belief in the scriptures, or even study of them, because they trust science and the whole Darwinian heliocentric worldview, which again asserts that humans are not special and that the earth is just one of the many millions of planets, so-called planets, which just happen to evolve life because of random circumstance. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, deceptions that have ever been perpetuated onto the consciousness of man, one that has led much of the world astray into believing science over God. I would also add that Rob Skiba just recently did a did a interview with David Wise, I believe, on the as far as the Sandy Hook, the Boston bombings, and also 9/11, but also talked about the flat Earth. And in that interview, which you can find on Rob's YouTube page, he talked about David talked about how he was a militant atheist and totally did not believe God or anything biblical and wanted nothing to do with the scriptures or any person even that would mention God or Jesus Christ or Yeshua, and that it was the flat earth that brought him to the understanding that if the earth is flat and that we are indeed the center of the universe and that there's a dome shaped enclosure which has been fitted to the earth as firmament, that there has to be a creator. And he said in that interview that he is now, because of his understanding and because of his newfound belief, opening himself to the possibility of even listening to um, such discourse. Whereas before, he said he would unfriend anybody that tried to talk to him about God on his Facebook or even mentioned God. And that he was not open to it in the least bit in any kind of way. And I know that Rob has this kind of testimony, and I've also received this kind of testimony from many people all over the world, which again, I believe even Patricia Steer, she talks about how she had never even owned a Bible and had never read the book of Enoch and never had studied or listened to, the teachings in that kind of way. And it was her coming to this knowledge and this revelation, which again opened her to such possibility. And so, in my opinion, especially for those that believe in science, believe NASA, believe the books that we've been all educated from, and and been swayed to think a certain way, that especially those kind of people and scientists, hardcore atheists, that this could be the one issue, the one revelation which brings them full circle back to the scripture and to reconsidering them in new light. Kathy?
There's so many different areas of research or just areas in our world that are touched by this, from the stars to planets to satellites to NASA to how the earth itself works with earthquakes, volcanoes, and people are researching that. And I am finding videos and explanations now, or things to consider, where we've accepted certain things because it's come to us from NASA or USGS. It's governmental agencies, government funded, colleges, universities, people who are getting their hands greased. That's where your information's been coming all your life. And except, in some cases, but for the large part, that's it. And you accept that and you believe that. And now that this has come to light, a lot of people are saying, now that makes sense to me. Things that they've thought of or haven't felt comfortable about, all of a sudden it makes sense to them. I know I never just had really questioned it. I questioned everything, but it never occurred to me to ask, why does the earth spin? But now there's such a vast array of topics to be looking into. The sun, I can't look at the sun now and imagine that it would be 93 million miles distant.
Right.
It's local. It's right there. So it's an amazing thing to have this happen now, this year. And I think there's a purpose. I think God has a purpose for this to be revealed right now at this time. And I think we need to honor that. On top of the salvation issue, people who would not be coming to an understanding of Creator. I think it's really important. This has been in my heart, that we need to honor God for His creation the way He intended it. People don't think it's important. I think it's immensely important.
I'm in agreement with you. I think it's immensely important as well. And you're right. And it is helping people to understand the creation in a way that they never had prior. And also for those that never had studied the scriptures, especially those that look to the book of Enoch for its revelation in connection to the fallen angels and giants and because all of that is incredible revelation as well. And then to learn that the book of Enoch has encoded into it, as I reveal in my latest and newest book, a description and an understanding of how the dynamics of the earth and the sun and the moon, the heavenly luminaries, how all of that works, and that this was encoded into it thousands of years ago, and at a time, because it's been over the last 500 years that we've believed otherwise, whereas the flat Earth and geocentricity were very ancient beliefs and long held for until recently that this knowledge has become lost. For this, because the Book of Enoch talks about how it was written for a remote and distant generation. And the Bible speaks about how truth would be revealed in the last days, with us as being the final generation, and that the Spirit would be poured out on all flesh. And that, in my opinion, this is the biggest as far as the revelations that are coming out. I say that now, but who knows what God has in store, because I never would have even guessed this kind of a revelation could come forth and could have been hidden from us and for hundreds of years, that we could have been led astray in such way, because this teaching and this understanding touches so much of every aspect of, as far as who we are and where we think we are, where we thought we were. And I mean, everything, and just the profundity of how this revelation connects to and ties to so many other aspects of what we are to know. And even just understanding the world. But now, because of this information being encoded within the scriptures, and how even it's confirming the veracity and the divinely inspired nature of not only the book of Enoch, but the Old and the New Testaments, and how science is now affirming what the Bible has long held as fact, that the earth does not move, that it is fixed and that it is immovable, that it was created as foundation for the firmament, the heavens which were spread as a curtain above it. And that according to the order of creation and to such dynamics, the earth is significantly much larger in proportion and size than either the sun or the moon. And that in order for us to truly understand the dynamics of world, we have to open ourselves to such possibilities. The book of Enoch asserts that the sun and the moon are of same size and same dimension, exactly as we see during a solar eclipse, when the disk of the shape of the moon totally blots out, except for the sun's rays, which surpass the boundary of the shape of the moon as it comes across the face of the sun. I mean, it absolutely shows us that they are of the same size, and yet NASA and science and astrophysicists assert that the moon is, the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but 40 times larger and 400 times further away, or something of that nature. And then when we look at all the claims that the Earth is moving at 1,037 521,666,666.7 miles per hour. All these 666 numbers, when you take the supposed inclination of 23.4 degrees, subtract that from 90 degrees of being straight up and down vertical, you get 66.6 degrees. All these different things let you know how this was, one of the ways that Lucifer, Satan the adversary, wanted to assert himself as the Most High God and to replace God, and his understand, the understanding of the geocentric Earth, and our being made in the image of the Creator, and our having shared special covenant with the Creator and with creation. That he has thwarted all of that and made the Son the predominant, the most eminent, player, and as far as given grandeur more to the Son than that of the earth, and the earth has been demoted. And we know that the Masons worship the sun god, and that Lucifer is considered the sun god, the light bearer, Apollyon. I mean, and so all of these things are coming to light, and it's my opinion that, because we are the final generation, that it is meant to do so. We've got 2 minutes to the next break. Comment on from you, Kathy.
Well, helio, the word helio means sun. And
Yes.
for us to be changed to heliocentrism, that would be a worshiping of the sun. So I think that's kind of obvious. We've let a lot of things go by and escaped our attention. So I think it is a purposeful deception. And if not the strong delusion, it's certainly a component that has allowed much else to come out.
Yeah, I'm fully in agreement with that. Yeah, this is definitely, if it's not the strong delusion, because I do believe there are different aspects of that, and that the ancient aliens being our creators, that has everything to do with this particular deception as well. Because again, it's the heliocentric Darwinian worldview which has perpetuated and established the foundation for this whole deception, and have led most of the world astray, as far as buying into and believing into these worldviews, and believing the scientists that assert this, and which are themselves either Masons or atheistic in their belief as to intelligent design, and there being a god, a grand designer, and so, anyways, we're coming to new light about all of these things, and it's a most amazing time to be alive. And we'll be right back for final segment, everyone. Welcome back, everybody, for final segment, and I thank you again for taking the time to listen to us, and I hope that we are presenting this information in a way that at least piques your curiosity. For those of you that haven't begun to look into or to go down this particular rabbit hole, but I know that a lot of you, especially here on Truth Frequency Radio, you have, and that this is, it's not your first rodeo as far as beginning to make and do this investigation, and that many of you are very advanced in your research. And so I hope that I'm at least presenting information which, is keeping you entertained, and also opening you to new possibility, because I know that there's not only a few, like I know Rob Skiba in particular, which cover this in great and profound nature as far as the biblical and prophetic side of how not only the canon, but the Book of Enoch and others, how they relate to this as topic. And so with that, I'm going to cover and bring forth some information. Well, first I want to say that according to Chronicles chapter 16, verse 30, Psalms 93 verse 1, Psalms 96 verse 10, Psalms 104, verse 5, Isaiah 40, the entire chapter, Isaiah 45, verse 18. All of these passages, all of these scriptures assert that the earth does not move, and that there were scientific experiments done which the actual experimenters were trying to prove that the earth does move, and they were trying to detect such movement and also to determine the speed of the earth's rotation. And what they discovered in doing these particular experiments is that the earth doesn't move. And contrary to the assertions of the heliocentric worldview, the earth does not move, and that, because the earth does not move, the whole belief that we orbit around the sun is a flawed belief. And it's a theory which has been totally unproven and should be thrown out as fabrication. Let me get you to comment on this first, Kathy, and then we'll go into this other part of what I want to talk about.
Well, what I have found, the more I dig into scripture and actually get into the meaning of the original Hebrew, using the Strong's Concordance, I just use the Blue Letter Bible software or internet. blueletterbible.org, and they have all of the concordances, dictionaries, so much more that you can utilize for tools. And I have found support for everything that I have looked more in depth to, and I think most people have taken someone else's interpretation rather than do the investigation themselves. And I think you would find that there is so much more and other ways to look at things, for instance, the firmament, that you've never considered before, which opens up other avenues to investigate, stars and just things that are coming more to the forefront right now.
Yeah, which brings me to the next question. And the individual's name is John. I'm not going to elaborate any further, but he asked me, Zen, are you saying in order to understand the book of Enoch, where he describes the workings of the heaven and the earth, that you must look at its description as if the earth was flat? And then he claims that why would we believe that the earth is flat when all of the other bodies in space are round? And so here's my answer to him, and this will set the premise for the rest of the show. And another thing that I want to bring up and talk about, I replied this: yes, that's exactly what I am saying. And not only saying, but I prove this in my newest and latest book, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. Enoch was high enough above the earth to see the full pattern of the sun's motion through the six gates of heaven over the course of an entire year. This is what he describes in the text, and it can only be understood when applied to the flat earth as model for world. Enoch was shown such understanding by Uriel, the angel appointed by Yahweh, the Creator, to regulate the heavenly luminaries. He describes in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries and dedicates 14 chapters to the movement of the sun and the moon, not the earth and moon. There is not one passage which describes the motion of the earth, but there are many which declare that the earth is stationary, fixed, and immovable. As I said in those scriptures that I related, but one final passage from the introduction of my book. Shortly after accepting the flat earth as model for world, I decided to revisit the book of the courses of the heavenly luminaries to see if my new understanding would somehow mirror what Enoch was sharing as motion for the sun and the moon. And as I began to read chapters 70 through 84, I found to my utter amazement that I was able to grasp those passages. I knew then that the vision that that the angel Uriel had shown to Enoch could only be deciphered if one were to imagine Enoch's description of the revolution of the sun and the moon as seen from above the flat circular plane of the earth as described by Isaiah in chapter 40. And that Enoch must have been taken up to perhaps where Polaris is, centered directly above the North Pole, and while looking down upon the backdrop of the earth, was instructed on the motions of both the sun and the moon. Without such conception, it is, in my opinion, impossible to apply these descriptions to the model of the earth as a spherical planet. Now I'm going to share a passage, because in my book I open this discussion with Psalms 19, where it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoiceth as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof." And so Enoch is actually describing in this portion something. David is saying in Psalms something that Enoch describes. He says this: "And the days Uriel showed me the angel whom the Lord of glory appointed over all the luminaries of heaven and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth, become conductors of the days and nights, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit with all the chariots of heaven." And so Enoch and David are talking about the sun moving above the face of above the earth, in the face of the sky. Let me get you to comment on this here. Good.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to just say, I know you're doing the chat room, but if you would comment on both the Psalms, David speaking about the chariot of the tabernacle of the sun, and how the sun moves above the earth. Let me read that passage one more time. It says this, Enoch says this, but I read Psalms 19. "And the days Uriel showed me the angel whom the Lord of glory appointed over all the luminaries of heaven and in the world, that they might rule in the face of the sky, and appearing over the earth become conductors of the days and nights, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the ministers of heaven, which make their circuit with all the chariots of heaven." And so he's just basically talking about how the sun and the moon move over the earth, just as we understand it in the flat earth model of the world. And that, because we believe that, heliocentrists believe that the earth is spinning every 24 hours, and orbiting around the sun once annually. And so they're just, basically asserting that it's the sun which moves and not the earth, which is also why in Joshua, the Most High gives Joshua the authority to stop the sun and the moon in their circuits, stops them in mid-revolution, and not to stop the earth and the moon. Because if the way that we believe it, if Joshua were trying to keep the sun from going down, he should have made the earth stop in mid, rotation. But the Most High gave him the authority to stop the sun and the moon in their circuits, and not the earth and the moon. Comment?
Well, and that's throughout. You never see it the other way around, and you would expect that would be very clear. Something that I think you have brought out before is that the sun will move at its own pace
Right.
in some instances, and I have found that very interesting. I can't think exactly where it is right now, but that's something I've kept in mind because there were so many things I've not understood in the past that now make sense, that these are sentient in some way, and that would even be the sun and the moon.
Right. And this is a very interesting thing as well. And for those that don't understand what we're talking about, Rob did this video where he was able to um, make Stellarium apply the movements of the sun and the moon to the flat Earth. And it's incredible what it shows because basically it shows when the sun is above the Tropic of Cancer, which is closer to the polar north. And for those that don't understand the azimuthal equidistant projection map, which is the map that the United Nations uses for the emblem on on their flag, the North Pole, the Arctic, is the very center of this, is the center region of this map. And the sun moves, and the moon also moves in rotation above and around the polar north. And the Tropic of Cancer is the innermost circle, and then the equator is a little bit bigger of a circle, and then on the very outside, you have the Tropic of Capricorn. I know it's hard to visualize, so please go look at the United Nations map or just pull up an azimuthal equidistance map, projection map, AZIMUTHAL, and it will show you how the orientation of the Earth actually is. And so, anyways, Enoch describes the movement of the sun back and forth between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. When the sun is above the Tropic of Cancer, it has its shortest revolution, and in order to stay equivalent as far as one circuit to one 24-hour period, the sun is moving at its slowest pace of any other time during the year. And when the sun is above the Tropic of Capricorn, which is the largest circle and the outer circle, when you see these three, the two tropics and the equator, as plotted on this equidistance projection map, it's the largest of circle, and because it is the has the greatest distance to travel, the sun actually has to move at a quicker pace than it does when it's either above the equator or above the Tropic of Cancer. And because of this, there's complete variation between the Arctic and the Antarctic as far as the climate, because the sun lingers above, when it's above the Tropic of Cancer, it moves very slow. The Arctic region during the summer solstice, and that time near around that particular time, it receives much more sunlight than does the Antarctic region during the winter solstice, which is summer for the southern latitudes. And so what you see as far as the Antarctic, the region there, because the sun during the summer has to move so very quickly in circuit above and around that particular region, the sun never lingers. And the sun also never, there's a phenomenon called the midnight sun where the sun actually stays above the horizon, never sets below the horizon during a period of 4 or 5 days, maybe even longer, depending on how close to the North Pole you are. But during this particular phenomena, you can see the sun in full circuit, in going towards the west and then back towards the north, and then back towards the east, and back towards the south. For 4 days, it will stay above the horizon, which this phenomena does not repeat itself in the southern and Antarctic regions. And the reason being is because the circuit of the sun is completely different. Whereas it's moving at a very slow pace during its circuit above the Tropic of Cancer, it has to move very fast in order to maintain a one circuit with one 24-hour period when it is moving above the Tropic of Capricorn. And you'll see the difference in, like in the Arctic, there's even polar seas that melt during the summer months, the summer solstice and around that time. And whereas in Antarctica, there's a mountain of ice which never thaws out. There's complete variation as far as the type of creatures that are found there, the type of plants, animals, and also human inhabitants. Whereas there are year-round human populations located in the Arctic regions, there are no such, besides the research facilities established by all these nations which have signed into the Antarctic Treaty. I'll get you to comment, and then I'll read one other aspect that I wanted to cover this evening.
Yeah, I think your first video, I just shared that in the chat room, that and in your book, that really helped me grasp what was going on with the midnight sun and how the circuits of the sun on the flat map as model would be an absolute way of envisioning that our world was created. It actually made a lot more sense to me than the globe, and I can't see it that way anymore. So that was what really helped me out.
Yeah, and if you think about even with the so-called globe inclined at a certain way, and even if you were to at the very North Pole, if you were located at the very North Pole, that's the only place you could see the midnight sun as phenomena occur upon the globe. But because of the supposed inclination and supposed wobble, there would be no way that you could witness and experience this phenomena where the sun stays above the horizon for multiple days. That just cannot happen on a globe, which again is verification that we are not living upon a globe, and that the Earth is not moving around the sun, orbiting around the sun as is declared by NASA and by the scientists. Now, there's one other passage, and I was just over the holiday, just yesterday, hanging out with family. I was reading Ecclesiastes, and there's a portion in this particular book which you can't find anywhere else in Scripture. And so I want to read just a little bit of that, and then I'll allude to exactly what I want to talk about. It says this in chapter 1. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. I'm going to skip to verse 14, because I know we're running out of time. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Now, the passage that I wanted to read, I actually skipped over. It was verse 5, but where it talks about the circuit of as far as the sun and how it moves. And I don't have that before me right now, but 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. It talks about, and Solomon, who is the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, he speaks about under the sun, just as it says in verse 14. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. If we are in a heliocentric worldview, and remember, Solomon was considered to be the wisest, and everybody from all over the world came to him for his wisdom. Even the Queen of Sheba went to him to visit him for his wisdom. But anyways, he speaks of how we are under the sun as is described by the book of Enoch, as is described in Isaiah, as is described by David in Psalms 19, talking about the tabernacle of the sun. And that is the sun and the moon which move in circuit above the earth, which again falls in line with the order of creation. Because in Genesis 1, the earth was created, the firmament was then created above it, and then on the fourth day, the sun and the moon were placed into the firmament. Now that just cannot make sense if the earth is orbiting around the sun and that we are spinning once daily as we annually cycle around the sun. How is it that the earth is created first and then we're just out there floating in space, and then the Most High God creates the sun on the fourth day and then places the earth and the other planets in orbit around it? Doesn't make sense. But when you understand, as declared by Isaiah and by Enoch, that it is both the earth, it's the sun and the moon which move above, in circuit above the earth and around the Arctic region, around the polar north, then some of these things start to open themselves to you. And also, there's another passage which I speak about in Isaiah chapter 38, where one of the signs given to Hezekiah was that the sun would be moved back 10 degrees on the sundial by the Most High. And if you think about that according to the heliocentric worldview, the earth would have to been stopped in rotation, moved back in the opposite direction, and then allowed to continue its natural cycle. And if that would have happened, there would have been massive tsunamis, earthquakes, polar shift, all the cataclysmic destruction would occur to the earth. But according to the story in Isaiah and also in 2 Kings, nothing of that nature happened. And it's only by applying that story to understanding it according to the flat earth as model for world that you are able to decipher it and to make sense of it. All right, Kathy, I'm going to give you a chance for a final comment.
Well, I agree. I just don't see with the proofs that I am coming into understanding now and seeing the experimentation scientific method where you can actually repeat a process. It's verifiable. It isn't a science department somewhere that's being funded. It's something that's real world experience. The horizon, the curvature that isn't there, these are the things that I'm seeing now. And yes, absolutely.